Ngayon, ito naman si Subiri and Company, no? Sabi niya, boycott Chinese products at companies. Yan. So, ayan na sila. But after a few days, eto na. Ayala finalized its deal with the Chinese electronic vehicle brand BYD. Ewan ko alam niyo yung BYD, no? It's a very famous electronic vehicle brand, no? Boycott Chinese products, blagadag. Ayala partners with Chinese EV brand BYD. Ayala. Ito si Jay Tariela, kamentong mention this. Recently kasi ito, meron siyang fellowship, no? Sa East-West Center. Alam mo, ako naman, no? I support continuous learning. Kahit saan ka pang mag-learn, no? Kahit pumunta ka pa ng North Korea, kahit pumunta ka pa ng Iraq, kahit pumunta ka ng United States, there's nothing wrong about learning. So, yung kanyang fellowship, it was sponsored by the US-Philippines Alliance Fellowship. You know, it's a group of Filipinos and Americans who would like to find mutual interest between the United States and Philippines, etc. At yung mga members ng UN-Philippine Alliance, these are, you know, the rich people, etc. And one of them, na member ng US-Philippines Alliance Fellowship, I see. Okay. So, why are you encouraging Filipinos to boycott Chinese products, while at the same time, the rich are entering to business deals with Chinese companies, lucrative deals? Bakit hindi muna sila yung sabihan ninyo? Baka kasi, kahit sina Ayala, hindi naniniwala sa pinaggagawa ninyo, or you have a different standard for the rich and the poor. Have we forgotten what our national hero Jose Rizal once said about China? Okay, this is what he said. China will consider herself fortunate if she succeeds in keeping herself intact and is not dismembered or partitioned among the European powers that are colonizing the continent of Asia. But China wasn't so fortunate. You know, China was partitioned by the West among themselves. Then Japan, later on, copied the Western powers. So, unlike us, China was simultaneously occupied by different Western powers. That's the truth of it, no? So while we got passed from one colonial master to another, China served several colonial masters at the same time. So kumbaga sa rape, na-rape lang tayo after ng isa, meron namang isa. So they were gang rape. You know, China was gang rape. So for China, it's South Sea. You know, that's what they call the South China Sea. The South Sea is a sea where it wants to be strong, just like us. So it could never be subjected to the same kind of humiliation. They want to be strong in the same way we want to be strong in the face of the treacherous waters of the sea of our vulnerability. Pero let us remember this. Our common sea isn't only waves of pain. Through its waters flow the long peace our peoples had with each other. China is not just another country to us. China is family. Okay, let's start. So the title of my presentation is, I'm so sorry ha, please bear with me ha, hindi ko maaalis ang aking pagiging teacher. So, medyo magtuturo ako ngayon. So I prefer na if you have some questions in the middle of my discussion, please just raise your hand so that I can address it right away, no? Para hindi ako mawala sa train of thought ko. So my presentation is entitled, The Reason Barbie Left the Philippines. Why rationality will save the Philippines from the warmongers of the South China Sea conflict. Slide. Okay, so bigyan ko yun ng history no, ng Mattel. 1976, Mattel, the company behind Barbie, had a manufacturing plant here in the Philippines. Okay, so far so good, no? December 1987, because of a lot of factors, Mattel had to lay off workers. So it was a business decision considering both internal and external business environment noong 1987, December 1987. So as a cost-saving measure, nag-lay off sila ng 1,850 layoffs. Siguro alam niyo na kung saan ito papunta. So, well, hindi talaga siya maganda, no? Wala namang gustong ma-lay off, diba? And of course, we do believe that work is a right. So remember those words. So work is a right. So January 1988, nagkaroon ng workers blockade. So sinara nila yung Kainta plant nila, inilipat nila doon sa Pasig plant. So nagkaroon ng workers blockade. But 85% ng mga employees ng Mattel wanted to just get on with their lives, no? They just want to work. But the strikers, mga ipaglaban ng ating mga karapatan, didn't want to. So they blocked the operations of Mattel. So Mattel, hindi na pala pwede mag-operate, no? Hindi na ito pwede pag-usapan. Just like any businesses, what did they do? They closed the operations. So, in order for the Welga to save 1,850 jobs, they lost all the jobs, 4,000. So, every one of them didn't have a job in the end. Can I have my next slide, please? So I will just give you the flow chart of what happened. So this is true for any company. So a company bargains or negotiates with the workers. Diba? Negotiate. Ngayon, syempre, hindi naman yan lahat ng workers, no? Gusto yung leader ng mga union. So some of them, okay na yan, okay na yung na offer. Diba? Or naiintindihan nila yung company, no? Na, naiintindihan naman namin kung bakit kailangan mag-lay off. And we're happy we have a job. So what do you think the union, yung mga leaders ng union would think about those people? They would consider them as a traitor to the cause of the workers. So the worker, so ito yung mga nagsasabi na traitor, yung mga workers na okay sa kanila yung negotiation or okay muna sa kanila sa ganyang setup, mag-huwelga. Iharangin nila yung operation. So what happens? The company stops operation, all workers lose their job. So this situation is applicable to any conflict, whether in your family, whether in your school, even in territorial disputes. Because this all boils down to understanding how conflict resolution and the negotiation process takes place. Can I have my next slide? Para lang maintindihan ng mga Pilipino. Kasi the other parties are engaging in demagoguery. They are not explaining things, right? They are appealing to emotion. Ngayon naman tayo, we will appear to the remaining intellect of the Filipino people so that we can save their intellect from these people who would like them to jump off the cliff. Ako naman, okay lang naman kung gusto ng mga Pilipinong tumalon sa bangin. Ako lang naman dito, katulad namin dito, gusto lamang magsabi sa mga Pilipino na, guys, there's a better option than jumping off the cliff. Siguro naman reasonable naman yun. No? Pero hindi naman kayo pipigilan. No? Kung gusto nyo silang sundin, tumalon kayo ng bangin, wala namang pipigil. No? Everyone is free to choose their own adventures in life. if they would like to jump off the cliff, just like the people being interviewed by the media would like them to do, they can jump off the cliff. But for us, we can just say to our countrymen, there's a better option. Okay. So this is how negotiation works. Okay. So makikita nyo dyan sa taas is, of course, the side of the party A and the party B. Okay. So nakikita nyo doon, di ba, merong bottom line ideal, bottom line ideal. Okay. Of course, the ideal position, gusto mong makuha lahat ng gusto mo. And that is also true to the other party. That's just really realistic about it. They also want to have 100%. Now, if you enter a negotiation, you cannot have 100%. Okay. So ano yung space na kung saan makakakita kayo ng agreement? Ito yung tinatawag sa negotiation na zone of possible agreement or ZOPA. Yan, ZOPA. Okay. So the wider the space, mas maganda, no? Mas marami kayong maaagrihan. Ngayon, of course, meron kang bottom line position. Ito yung walk-off point mo. Okay? Na pag ito, hindi na to na, pag ito na yung, narurok ko na ito, para makapag-agree ako sa iyo, mag-walk out ako. Pero hindi ka basta-basta mag-walk out. Okay? Mag-walk out ka lang kung yung BATNA mo, okay, what does BATNA mean? It means best alternative to a negotiated agreement. BATNA. So kung yung kagustuhan mo ay makukuha mo outside negotiation, go ahead. Walk out of the negotiation. But if you can't, walking out of the negotiation is stupid. Because you cannot get it outside of negotiation and you can only get it within a context of negotiation, bakit ka mag-walk out? Diba? So I think itong ganitong understanding, no, pagpapaliwanag sa mga Pilipino, ay ayaw nila. Dahil meron silang agenda. Can I have my next slide, please? Ito ano na to, blockbuster na to sa atin dito. No, kanina pa ata pinag-uusapan dito ni Kamendong at ni Ana. Si kagalang-galang na ano ba to? Pentagon Coast Guard. Ay, ano ba 'yan? Ano ba 'yan? Ano ba? Pentagon Coast Guard. Philippine Coast Guard. Sabi niya, pro-China Filipinos traitors. Wow. Ayan siya, tandaan niya. Filipino traitors. Pare-pareho sila. Next slide. Hindi niyo ito nabanggit. Si Ambassador Babes Romualdez. And syempre, hindi papahuli, no? Sabi ni Ambassador Babes Romualdez, we support and stand by our Pentagon, Philippine Coast Guard. China's bullying and aggression is a highly emotional issue. So, emotional issue for patriotic Filipinos. So, it's a highly emotional issue for patriotic Filipinos. So, when they hear a few when a few misguided, intellectually stupid people acting like China's apologies, justifying the reprehensible actions of Chinese Coast Guard and militia vessels in the West Philippine Sea, it really makes them feel so angry. It will not be surprising if it drives them to become a lynch mob. O nagtatawag na ng lynch mob, diba? Okay lang daw. Justifiable naman daw kung magka-lynch mob, no? The recent incident where the Chinese Coast Guard conducted dangerous maneuvers and sprayed water cannons at 2 Philippine boats, actually one lang to, no? Carrying rice, water, vegetable. Hindi yung na for troops stationed at the BRP Sierra Madre and Ayungin Shoal. It's just another example of the relentless harassment and bullying that we have been facing for years. While China keeps professing that it wants to resolve maritime dispute through peaceful means, Clearly, its actions indicate otherwise. So tandaan niyo yung sinabi niya, intellectually stupid. Ano daw? Ano pa yan? O, naiintindihan naman daw niya kung yung mga emotionally patriotic Filipinos sumugod at maging lynch mob. Okay. Ay, hindi ko alam, no? I don't want to assume the intention, pero everything will become clearer later at kayo na lang humusga. And then suddenly, the AF, the Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces of the Philippines, General Romeo Browner, sabi niya, pag yung water cannons daw na bombahan ng tubig ng Chinese Coast Guard ang Navy ship, pwede raw itong ma-interpret. How can I say this without laughing, no? Pwede raw itong ma-interpret as an act of war. Pero kami yung intellectually stupid, no? Okay. Fine. Okay. Hihimay-himayin natin itong mga pinagsasabi nila, no? Okay. Ngayon, ito naman si Subiri and Company, no? Sabi niya, boycott Chinese products at companies. Yan. So, ayan na sila. But after a few days, eto na. Ayala finalized its deal with the Chinese electronic vehicle brand BYD. Ewan ko alam niyo yung BYD na. It's a very famous electronic vehicle brand, no? And yung mga hindi nakakaalam who doesn't know the industrial structure of China, you know, even private corporations, meron niyang link with the Chinese the Communist Political Party. Because it's a socialist country, you know, they would like their businesses to serve the needs of their people. So that's it. So, boycott Chinese products, blagadag. Ayala partners with Chinese EV brand BYD. Ayala. Ito si Jay Tariela, kamentong mention this. Recently kasi ito, meron siyang fellowship, no? Sa East-West Center. Alam mo ako naman, no? I support continuous learning. Kahit saan ka pang mag-learn, no? Kahit pumunta ka pa ng North Korea, kahit pumunta ka pa ng Iraq, kahit pumunta ka pa ng United States, there's nothing wrong about learning. So yung kanyang fellowship, it was sponsored by the US-Philippines Alliance Fellowship. You know, it's a group of Filipinos and Americans who would like to find mutual interest between the United States and Philippines, etc. At yung mga members ng UN-Philippine Alliance, these are, you know, the rich people, etc. And one of them, na member ng US-Philippines Alliance Fellowship, I see. Okay. So, why are you encouraging Filipinos to boycott Chinese products? While at the same time, the rich are entering to business deals with Chinese companies. Lucrative deals. Bakit hindi muna sila yung sabihan ninyo? Baka kasi, kahit sina Ayala, hindi naniniwala sa pinaggagawa ninyo. Or you have a different standard for the rich and the poor. Next slide, please. Dalawang click. Okay. Ngayon, itong mga pinagsasabi ni Babes Romualdez, ni Jay Tariela, I'm so sorry guys, no? Naunahan na kayo ng CIA. Because in June, was it in June? This year or July? Nag-publish ang International Republican Institute na isang publication na ang title ay Countering China's Information Manipulation in the Indo-Pacific and Kazakhstan. Siyempre, nandun ako, ano? At yan pa talaga yung pinili nilang i-post. Ilagay na sample ng post ko. This was my post. Talaga sinusubaybayan nila ako kasi yung post na yan, they screenshot the post a day after I posted it. Sabi ko lang, nakalagay kasi dyan, for 2 consecutive presidential elections, the Filipino people defeated the CIA's candidates. Bravo. Ganyan. So, ayan, ako daw, part daw ako ng PRC misinformation eklabu. Kaya hindi na ako nagtataka, no? Naunahan na kayo ng CIA. Bakit ko sinabing CIA itong International Republican Institute, no? This is a CIAR. Can we go to the next slide? You know, the International Republican Institute, or IRI, ito yung bahagi ito ng 4 core funding agencies ng National Endowment for Democracy. Okay, so IRI, tapos National Democratic Institute, Center for International Private Enterprise, saka Solidarity Center. So yung nakakaalam ng CPP-NPA structure, pareho sila mag-spread ng propaganda. So meron silang for kung hindi mo bet ang Democrats sa United States, meron naman kaming International Republican Institute. Kung ayaw mo naman ng mga Republicans sa United States, meron naman kaming National Democratic Institute. Pero syempre, meron din kami for the businesses, sa mga entrepreneurs. At meron din kami para sa mga workers. So covered nila yung mga all bases. So the funding comes from the US government, and then devolved to the National Endowment for Democracy, tapos sinahati niya yan sa 4 na yan. Ngayon, sabi nung dating, at hindi naman ito conspiracy theory, no? Ito ang sinabi ng dating head ng National Endowment for Democracy. A lot of what we do today was done covertly 25 years ago by the CIA. Kasi nga, yung ginagawa ng CIA, noong mga panahon na yan, nagkakaroon na ng problema sa US Congress kasi ang daming ekse-ekse na. So gumawa sila ng other arm in order to cover some of activities that could be considered legitimate in a democracy for the promotion of freedom, peace, and love the Philippines. Ganyan. So, that is the context of their statement. Whatever they're saying right now is a continuation of the narrative of the US government. Can you have the next slide? Because right now, you know, you can Google this later. No? Go to YouTube. Sa Breakthrough News. Ito nangyayari sa United States right now. New witch hunt demonizes peace with China. So yung mga pro-peace na ayaw ng gera, gusto ng maayos with China, dinidemonize na ngayon sa United States. And we are continuing it in our country through these people. So, hindi siya nalalayo. Okay? Pero ang pinagtataka ko kasi, bakit sila concerned sa amin? Can we go to the next slide? Comment, I'm so sorry, you know, I have to deviate from your analysis of the survey. This is the survey from Okta. Actually, medyo magulo ito, no? Just recently lang ito, July 22 to 26, Okta. So ang question is, ano ba yung measures na to be prioritized by government to address the conflict in the West Philippine Sea? 70% ang sabi is, assert the Philippines' territorial rights through diplomacy and other peaceful methods. Pero at the same time, 65% say na assert the Philippines' territorial rights through military action. 61% sabi modernize, so military again. And then the next one, conduct joint maritime patrol and exercise with allied countries, 40%. So all of them are actually the narrative of these people. Ibig sabihin, majority na yung mga tao naniniwala sa inyo. Ito yung gusto ninyo, ito yung gagawin natin. Yun ang gusto nila. Naman yung gusto naman natin na anak, Mentong, no? Alam mo kung ilan lang. 19%. So only 19% of Filipino believes in shelving dispute for joint economic development of the area. 19! 19% lang kami. So bakit kayo concerned sa amin? Oh, 65% pala ng mga Pilipino gusto ng gera. 19% nga lang kami na ayaw eh. Di ba? Yung 70% na Filipinos would like to assert territorial rights through diplomacy and other peaceful methods. I think this is kind of difficult, no, to interpret. Kasi maybe Filipinos, the way they understand diplomacy might be the way mainstream media is presenting it. Diplomatic protest, mag-send ng note verbal, pumunta ng United Nations, makipag-usap sa Amerika. Maybe that's what they think about what diplomacy is. That is the essence of diplomacy. But it is not, no? I will discuss it later. So bakit kami why are they concerned about the 19%? Eh kasi ako, kung 19% lang yung umaayaw sa akin, no? The hell I care. Bakit kailangan na yung ambassador natin sa United States, magsalita pa? Bakit si Jay Tariela, kailangan magdrama pa, may press conference pa? 19% lang kami. Why spend that resources on the 19%? Do they want Filipinos to be 100% to be fully in their plan? Gusto ba nila na sa Pilipinas, kailangan lahat maniniwala sa kanila? Ano ba tayo? Are we a theocracy? Are we back in the dark ages na bawal kang mag-disagree sa orthodoxy ng simbahang Katolika, otherwise you will be burned at stake? Are you the Pope? What are you? Akala ba namin ang China ang dictatorship? Akala ba namin ang China ang walang freedom of speech? Lahat dapat lang sumunod sa gusto ng Chinese Communist Party of China. Bakit nyo sila ginagaya? Kung mali pala po yan, sir. Kasi ang ginagaya ninyo, ang United States. You know, when the United States wants to sell an agenda, lahat naman dito kami, no, lumaki na kami. Alam na namin yung galawan ng United States. Siguro yung mga bata, hindi pa nila alam. No? Nalalat mo namin yan. We have witnessed the Kuwait, the first Gulf War. We witnessed the invasion of Iraq. We witnessed a lot of things that the Americans did. That's why we can easily spot whether they're doing it again. But the thing is, a lot of our Filipinos are not aware because during those times, wala pa noon masyado tayong access sa international news. What we always see is what the Philippine mainstream media actually deliver to us. That's why, kita nyo, all those people, sinasabi nila, let's pursue peaceful means and diplomacy. 70% Filipino. Pero hindi alam ng mga Pilipino what it actually means. Military action, 65%. Sino yung mga hindi nabibigyan ng espasyo sa mainstream media? Well, except from SMNI, but I don't consider kasi SMNI as mainstream media. So, sino yung hindi nabibigyan ng espasyo? Who? Those who believe in shelving the disputes for joint economic development of the area. And it reflects 19%. So that's how powerful mainstream media is shaping our preferences. Because that's what they want to do, no? They would like to limit the preferences of the Filipino people. And kaya pag nag-decide sila, they would like to make Filipinos believe na, hindi, we are already in a desperate situation. That's why we have to jump off the cliff na. And those people na magsasabi sa mga Pilipino na there is a better option are called intellectually stupid by Ambassador Babes Romualdez. Na hindi ba kayo nagkataka? Bakit yung ambassador natin, for example, sa UAE, hindi nagsasalita tungkol dito? Ambassador natin sa Kuwait, ambassador natin sa India, Pakistan, ambassador sa China or sa Japan, ambassador natin sa Indonesia. Why is Babes Romualdez, our ambassador in the United States, so active here? What is his interest? I-explain natin yan mamaya. Okay, next slide. I'm sorry, bear with me, no? Medyo mahaba to. But wala na naman tayong space, no, sa mainstream media. So dito na natin buhos lahat. So, eto kasi yan, no? So, those who are following the narrative, tinatawag na kaming traitor because we would like to analyze the facts. We would like to analyze the situation holistically in a more balanced way to understand the historical context. Because, ito alam to ng mga intellectuals, no, ng mga Filipino intellectuals. Siguro naman, no, stand up and defend real scholarship. You know that a behavior cannot be explained on its own. It has to be explained within its context, within its situation. Alam din to ni Justice Carpio. Ikaw ba, Justice Carpio, pag ikaw ay nagja-judge at may naghabla, sinampal po ako nito, hindi mo ba pakikinggan ang nasasakdal? Ganyan ba tayo, ang justice system natin? Hindi natin pwedeng pakinggan ang nasasakdal. Kasi dapat doon lang tayo sa naghahabla. Matatalino naman itong mga to eh. Supreme Court Justice nga ito eh. Hindi ba yan ang very basic premise ng hustisya? Na dapat mong pakinggan ang nasasakdal at dapat mong balansihin ang kanilang mga istorya upang malaman mo ang iyong magiging desisyon. Yan ang hustisya. Ang scale ba ng hustisya ay dapat ito ay nakatagbingi pabor sa naghahabla? Hindi ba nang ganyan ang ating kultura? Saan galing yung kultura na yan? Bakit bigla ninyong itinapon ang ganitong mga values natin? Dahil lamang sa gusto ninyong awayin ng mga ordinaryong Pilipino, ang China. Pero ang inyong mayayaman na mga kabarkada ay pwedeng kumita sa kanilang mga business deals sa China. Ipaliwanag nyo nga ito sa amin. Bakit iba ang approach ninyo sa mayayaman ng bansang ito tungkol sa issue na ito? Pero sa mga mahihirap at katulad namin na payak lamang ang pamumuhay, ay gusto nyo kaming mag-aklas na at pumunta sa gera kapag ang Philippine National Navy ay masabuyan lamang ng tubig ng Chinese Coast Guard. Saan nyo hinuhugot ang mga konsepto na ito? Ako po ay nag-aral sa The Hague, sa Leiden University. Ang The Hague po, ang sentro ng international law sa mundo. Ikaw, Babes Romualdez, nakita ko ang CV mo. Siyempre, titingnan mo ang background, no? Kung ano bang pinaghuhugutan nito. Wala kang pinag-aralan sa international law. Wala kang pinag-aralan sa international relations. Ang kursong tinapos mo ay business administration. So ako rin naman, Babes Romualdez, nagtapos din ako ng kursong Business Administration sa Human Resource Management lamang, no? Sa Open University of Hong Kong. At alam namin ang takbo ng utak ng mga katulad mo na gustong magnegosyo. Sino ba ang unang mamamatay sa gera? Una bang mamamatay sa gera ang mayayaman na nasa Forbes Park? O ang mga mangingisda na ginagamit ninyo para sa inyong personal na agenda? Ayaw nyo kaming magsalita. Dahil kapag kami ay nagsalita at marinig ng mas marami pang tao, baka hindi nyo na makuha ang gusto nyong mahangad para sa kapakanan ng inyong bulsa at ng inyong pamilya. Ano ba ang sinabing primary issue ng mga Pilipino ngayon? Gutom. Mataas na presyo ng kuryente. Korupsyon sa gobyerno. Paulit-ulit na sistema ng gobyerno na ang pinapalitan lamang natin ay ang magnanakaw. At kung sino ang manggagadyo sa atin. Di ba? So, sino ba ang tunay na kalaban ng mga Pilipino? Sino ba ang dahilan kung bakit ang taas ng kuryente sa ating bansa? Kung bakit ang taas ng kagutuman sa ating bansa dahil napakataas ng presyo ng pagkain. May nabasa akong news article recently. Ang sabi ang taas nung survey, 120,000 yung na-survey. Ang mga bata raw ngayon ay lumalaki na, karamihan ay lumalaki ng malnourished. Stunted growth. The reason? Mahal ang pagkain. Bakit? Bakit gusto nyo kaming magalit sa nagsaboy ng tubig sa Philippine Coast Guard? Pero ayaw nyo kaming magalit sa inyong nagsasamantala sa Pilipinas mula nung panahon pa ng Spanish colonization. Kayo rin naman yung mga pamilyang kumita ng Spanish colonization, American colonization, panahon ni Marcos, panahon uli ni Marcos. Hindi ba tama yan? Mali ba yan? Sasabihin kami ni Babes Romualdez, Diyos ko Babes Romualdez. Alam ng mga Pilipino ang karakas ng mga Romualdez sa bansang ito. Napakayaman ninyong mga Romualdez, pero tingnan ninyo ang inyong probinsya. Yes, I'm from that province. Yan ba ang pinagmamalaki ninyong moralidad? Na kayo ay dinidisplay ninyo ang yaman ninyo sa sanlibutan, pero ang mga nasasakupan ninyo ay walang makain? Kahit kapitalista, mahihiya sa inyo. Dahil hindi capitalism ang inyong ginagawa. Ang ginagawa ninyo ay pandarambong sa bayan. Sabi nyo, bawal namin tingnan. Kasi para sa kanila, judgment sa kanila, na pag tiningnan namin ang historical context at lalo naming maintindihan ang sitwasyon, ay maiintindihan namin kung bakit ito ginagawa ng China. Bakit ba ito mali? Bakit sa tingin nila ito ay mali? Bakit? Next slide. Ito ay si Justice Radha Binod Pal. Siguro hindi ito ay nakikilala. Siya ay isang Indian international legal scholar. Siya ang nag-iisang dissenting opinion sa International Military Tribunal for the Far East. Ito yung tribunal laban sa Japan, sa mga military officers ng Japan. Nag-iisa siyang dissenting opinion. O syempre, na-encounter ko lang to sa The Hague, no? Hindi ko naman na-encounter to dito. Hindi ko naman alam na meron palang ganito. So ako ay pumunta sa Peace Library sa The Hague. At aking binasa ang kanyang dissenting opinion. The original copy na naka-imbak sa Peace Library sa The Hague. Nakapit-bahay ko lang naman sa The Hague, no? Ang kanyang analysis ay, ang kanyang judgment, not guilty ang mga Hapon. Kaya ito si Justice Pal, meron tong shrine sa Japan. You know, that's why the Japanese should remember the judgment of Justice Pal, or what it actually means. What Justice Pal said was, the actions of Japan cannot be separated from the actions of the Western imperialists in Asia. He said that he doesn't condone the actions of the Japanese, but it doesn't mean that the Japanese should be the only one that should be guilty. Because for every action, there is a reaction. You cannot understand a behavior, babalik tayo, without understanding the context. So what Justice Pal said is, Justice Carpio, you listen. Questions of law are not decided in an intellectual quarantine area in which legal doctrine and the local history and all else is forcibly excluded. We cannot afford to be ignorant of the world in which dispute arise. That's what Justice Pal said, the only dissenting opinion to the tribunal against Japan. And this has been my inspiration in looking at every conflict. I read this in 2011, no, during my first year in The Hague, because this is our first lesson, war. And this is very relevant. So you cannot understand the Ayungin incident by just looking at that particular moment. You'll have to learn the history, okay, of the conflict and the history that produced the conflict itself. Next slide. Okay. Oh, wala pang kino-quote na Chinese, ha? Because it's not necessary. Okay. So this is a quote from R.P. Anand. No? He's another Indian international legal scholar. Magaling to si R.P. Anand, eh. No? His paper is entitled Maritime Practice in Southeast Asia until 1600 AD and the Modern Law of the Sea. Sabi niya, i-quote ko yung, babasahin natin ang buo. While the general practice of freedom of navigation and unobstructed maritime commerce continued to prevail in the Indian Ocean and the East Indies until the beginning of the 15th century. Remember that year, 15th century. When, as we have seen, the Portuguese for the first time tried to destroy it In Europe, the situation was entirely different. From the 13th century, after a period of wild anarchy, following the fall of the Roman Empire, European countries started to making wide claims over large areas of the oceans. Thus, besides preposterous claims by Spain and Portugal, Venice assumed the sovereignty of the whole of the Adriatic Sea, and Genoa followed her example in the Ligurian Sea. England became mistress of the undefined British seas, and Denmark blocked the Baltic by her closure of the Sound and claimed sovereignty of the northern seas. All these claims gave rise to innumerable disputes about fisheries, trading, and navigation, and these disputes not infrequently led to sanguinary wars. Sounds familiar? Sounds like what's happening right now in our part of the world. Because the truth, the historical truth is, freedom of navigation originated in Asia. It originated in Asia. I know this for a fact because Hugo Grotius, the patron saint of the laws of the sea, he's actually studied in Leiden. Kaya nga isang legal center sa Leiden, Hugo Grotius ang tawag eh. Where I studied. So I know where Hugo Grotius got the idea. Got the idea in Asia. We have freedom of navigation in Asia for millennia. For a long time in our history. What destroyed that freedom of navigation? The Europeans. They destroyed everything. And then, the Europeans implanted in our brains their practices. We divide lands, and we divide the seas. Look what's happening right now in Africa. Diba? Are you following the news in Africa? It's the same forces of history acting in two different regions. Do you remember what the EU Commissioner President said when she came here? For the first time, she said, the situation in Ukraine and South China Sea are the same. Essentially what she said. Hindi ako maluloko ng mga Europeans na ito. 12 years akong tumira sa Europe. Nagtrabaho ko under a Dutch senator na dating ambassador ng Netherlands. Ang professor ko ng Foreign Policy and Diplomacy, a former NATO Secretary General. So alam ko yung mga galawang ito, no? Europe lacks resources. It will die in a few decades if it doesn't address it. We might go back to the Middle Ages, no? Because they don't have resources. They want to get it somewhere else. So this is the context of the history. The traditional order of Asia was destroyed by the Europeans and by the Americans. Because the Americans are essentially Europeans, no? So they came here, they fraternized with the colonizers because they both belong to the civilized nations of the world, as they claimed. And then they wanted to rule this part of our world. The United States and Tariela, Justice Carpio, etc., ambassador, love mentioning freedom of navigation. Diba? Freedom of navigation here, freedom of navigation there, etc., etc. What do they actually mean? Okay. Ito ang hindi alam ng mga Pilipino. At dapat nilang malaman, no? Dahil ginagawa silang mangmang ng mga ito. Walang interes ang mga Amerikanong i-educate tayo sa mundo. Wala. Ang interes lamang ng mga Amerikano ay hulmahin ang ating mga utak para maloko na naman tayo katulad ng ginawa nila kay Aguinaldo. Freedom of navigation. For the longest time in Asian history, only meant freedom of commercial navigation. Merchant ships. Sinong nagbago nito? Ayan. Who wanted to change this? Of course, the usual suspects, no? The colonizers. The United Kingdom, France, and the United States. And of course, Netherlands, the great naval powers of the Western barbaric civilization. Kailan lang nila ito gustong baguhin? 1950s. Kaya yung sinasabi nila na matagal na merong ganitong freedom of navigation of warships. It's not true. Malaking kalokohan. In fact, sa Corfu Channel case, I believe this is between the United Kingdom and I forgot sino yung isang bansa, but just search for it. The Corfu Channel case, no? The American representative said there, warships threatens. Merchant ships do not. That's why they can freely pass. That's the stand of the American representative in the Corfu Channel case. Warships threatens, merchant ships do not. How many news have you heard that China actually stopped a merchant ship in the South China Sea? Let's stick to facts. Wala. The dispute of China and the United States are about the freedom of navigation of warships, which the people of the third world were against. They were against the freedom of navigation of warships. Ang nag-insist lamang yung mga Europeans at mga Amerikano. That's why, you know, a lot of our Asian neighbors, they require prior authorization and notification for warships to enter their territorial sea. Ayaw yan ng Amerika. Yan lang ayaw ng Amerika. Wala namang pumipigil lang merchant ships. Okay. Last 5 minutes na lang daw ako, but I will protest the Okay, so what actually do we want, no? We want diplomacy, like 70% of the Filipinos say na gusto nila. Para lang sa edukasyon, kaalaman ng mga Pilipino, ano bang ibig sabihin ng diplomasya? Ito ay mula sa Oxford Handbook of Modern Diplomacy. Okay? Sabi dito, diplomacy, it is about looking for and finding common ground. About forging agreement and achieving a balance of benefits that will allow each party to go home with at least some degree of satisfaction. Yon. Okay. Ano pa ang sabi? Ano pa ba ang characteristic ng isang magaling na diplomat? Next slide, please. Sabi, diplomacy requires patience and an open mind. A diplomat who shows genuine interest in the history and culture of the country to which she is accredited, who refrains passing peremptory judgments on the behavior of its political leaders and the mores of its people, who listens more than she preaches, will easily win the hearts and the confidence of her interlocutors. That's diplomacy. Kaya ito mga pinaghuhugutan nila ng diplomacy, hindi natin maintindihan kung saan nanggaling. Where are they getting this? Now, sabi nila, Sasot, gusto mo mag-negotiate. What do you mean by that? Kasi ito ang stand nila, no? Ito ang stand nila. Before ng negotiation, first and foremost, China must acknowledge the jurisdiction of the Permanent Court of Arbitration and respect its July 2016 ruling, recognizing the Philippines' territory. And this is not debatable. An emerging strategy by the Philippine government taps into the power of public opinion. Distinguished maritime and security experts agreed that exposing China's activities within the Philippine territory to the public is a strategic move. Ano ba yung problemang nire-resolve nila dito? Okay. Ano yung problemang nire-resolve nila dito? Okay. Can you go to the next slide? More. Okay, babalik tayo dito, no? Okay. Ay, sorry. Okay. So, syempre, kailangan natin mag-negotiate. Dahil wala namang nangyayari sa international negotiations na hindi na, sa international relations na hindi na uuwi sa negotiations. Ano ba pinag-i-input nila sa utak ng mga Pilipino? Nag-aral pa talaga ito. Tapos tayo yung intellectually stupid? Sabi ni Babes Romualdez, hinahamon kita. Magbigay ka ng instance sa international history or international conflict history na yung conflict ay hindi rin nagtapos sa negotiation. Nakipag-negotiate nga sa Nazi Germany or sa Germany after World War II. Twice. Nakipag-negotiate nga sa Japan. Sinabuyan ka ng tubig, ayaw mo makipag-negotiate? Ano ito? Saan tayo nakakita sa international history, no? Na sinabuyan ng tubig, naghimagsik at isinulong ang bansa sa gera. Bakit kami yung intellectually stupid ngayon? Okay. So, balik tayo dito, no? So, sabi nila, hindi kami makikipag-negotiate until China recognizes the arbitration award. So, that's your ideal position. So, what is the walk-off point of the Philippines? It's the same as the ideal position. Saan ka nakakita na negotiation na your ideal position is the same as your bottom line? And nagturo ako ng international negotiations sa Maastricht University. This doesn't appear in our lesson at all because this is stupid and doesn't happen in reality. Ngayon, gusto mo ganun yung ideal position mo. Ano ngayon yung better alternative to a negotiated agreement? Eh, syempre, hindi mo makukuha yung ideal mo. So, paano mo makukuha yung ideal mo outside the concept of negotiation? Gera. Makukuha mo pa yung ideal position mo because of war? Look at Ukraine right now. Is it getting what it wants? No. Because its ideal position, it's the same as its bottom line position. Eh kung gusto mo pala na ganoon, na yung ideal mo, bottom line position mo rin, o di ganun din ang gagawin ng China. O kami rin. No? O paano kayo mag-uusap? Is negotiation possible? Na pag yung ideal position mo ay the same ng iyong walk-off point? No, because you don't have a zone of possible agreement. And negotiation is only possible if this is present. But, yung mga intellectuals daw sa atin, tanggalin natin ang zone of possible agreement, but still, they expect that it will end peacefully. Para mga nagwelga, di ba? Utak NPA eh. Hindi namin nakuha ang gusto namin. Mag-aaklas kami. Maghihimagsik, pupunta ng bundok. Gera. Ano nangyari sa mga NPA ngayon? Corn beef, di ba? Okay. So what do we do? Sabi nila, can we go back to previous slide? Malapit na ako matapos. I'm so sorry. Okay. So what do we do? Okay? Because the people, ini-interview ng mainstream media, do not know what they're talking about. Okay? We don't negotiate based on position. We negotiate based on interests. Okay. Anong pinagkaiba nito? No? Kasi marami kasi sa mga Pilipino do not know how to negotiate. No? Ano ibig sabihin nito? Bibigyan ko ng madaling example. Ha? Halimbawa ako ay galit ako sa kapitbahay ko dahil yung aso niya is tahol lang tahol tuwing natutulog ako. So my position is, patayin mo yung aso mo. That's my position. Yung kalaban mo, ang position niya, hindi ko papatayin yung aso ko. Is negotiation possible in that scenario? No. So what do? You go beyond the position, You go beyond what you want to what you really need. Ano yung need ko talaga? Kung bakit gusto kong patayin mo aso niya. Because I want to sleep peacefully at night. Now, are there other solutions other than killing the dog? I can name a lot. Baka pwede namang i-train mo yung aso mo. Baka naman pwedeng, mag-negotiate tayo. Na pag weekend, sige, hayaan mo yung aso mo. Pero pag weekdays naman, is ilayo mo naman siya dito. Kuting, or baka pwede mong palitan na gawin mo na lang na kuting ng norte. So baka pwedeng gano'n, no? Maraming alternative. So ngayon ikaw, na dinidemandan, na patayin mo yung aso mo, hindi ka na doon naka-box in. Nandun ka na sa need. Pareho naman pala kami ng kagustuhan nito. Because positions are never reconcilable. That's basic in negotiations. Hello naman. Napakatiba, this is negotiation 101. No, this is negotiation level 1. Okay. So what do? We negotiate based on interest. Okay. Bakit? Kasi nga, doon mo makikita yung mutual interest mo. You can never have mutual position. Kaya nga kayo may conflict eh. Because your positions are not mutual. So, you want to move from a position na hindi kayo mutual to a position that you have mutual interest, and that is diplomacy. So, tanong sa akin, bakit may mutual interest ba dyan? Ganyan talaga ang China at Pilipinas. Well, ito lang yan, no? The South China Sea is the common sea of Asians. Because it's our common sea, matagal na natin ito pare-parehong ginagamit. We have common interests in terms of fishing. We have common interests in terms of the oil, energy, requirements. Kailangan nating mabuhay, no? We need them. Ngayon, bakit hindi natin ma-frame ito as a mutual interest? Because we are bargaining based on position. It is a winner-takes-all strategy if you bargain in terms of position. At sa winner-takes-all strategy, there are only two outcomes. Either you get everything or you get nothing. So ano po bang chance? Justice Carpio. At kung sino man dyan, no? Babes Romualdez. Na if we keep negotiating based on position, makukuha natin yung everything. And paano? Then dito sila sa ilalim. Ayun na nga. Baka kasi kaya hindi natin makita ang ating mutual interest sa ating kapitbahay ay dahil may dayo na nakikialam. Diba? Mag-ano na tayo? Let's be frank about this. So, hindi ka po pwedeng pumunta ng negotiation na ideal position mo is the same as your bottom line position. At yan ang mali sa atin. Na paulit-ulit, inuulit-ulit ng mainstream media. Mag-interview naman kayo ng matalino. Diyos ko, Lord. Kita mo, nabanggit na rin naman ni Kamentong si Richard Hidarian. No? I'm so sorry, Richard. Ilalaglag na kita, no? Noong 2019, nagdebate kami nito. Alam niyo naman, nagdebate kami niya, no? Siyempre, of course, leading to the debate is nag-uusap, in preparation, etc. Because we have mutual interest to elevate the discussion. Siya, mabait, ganyan. Sinabi pa naman sa akin, no? Alam mo, Sass, tama ka naman sa South China Sea arbitration. Pag mo kung ano yun, Hidarian, I have your voice message telling me that. Ba't hindi mo masabi sa publiko? You are intellectually dishonest. So we have to negotiate based on interest rather than position. We have a lot of common interests. Eh dito dinidiscuss sa mainstream media eh. And then it's achievable. Sabi nila, hindi raw achievable because the Constitution forbids it. Diyos ko, por Diyos por santo, no? Why don't you pass a law and declare the West Philippine Sea a special economic zone? Tapos ang problema mo sa Constitution. Diba? May mga special economic zone tayo sa buong Pilipinas where we can be flexible about applying our economic laws and etc. And we even actually allow 100% ownership of mining now. Oh, bakit ayaw mo dito sa West Philippine Sea? What is so special about the West Philippine Sea that you cannot turn it into a special economic zone when in fact the exclusive economic zone is not even part of your territory? And that is the truth of the matter. That there's no concept in international law na nagsasabi na the exclusive economic zone is part of your territory. Binibigyan mo nga, nagkakaroon ka nga ng special security zone sa United States within your territory. Diba? Okay, to end, can we, nabobore na yung mga ta. To end, last slide please. Next. Ito ay sinabi ni Harry Holkeri, no? Isa siyang sikat na Finnish diplomat, is very good in conflict resolution. If you come to a negotiation table saying you have the final truth, that you know nothing but the truth, and that is final, you will get nothing. Every businessman knows that. Ito, nandito si Peter, businessman to si Peter. Ikaw ba, Peter, pwede ka bang mag-negotiate? Sabi mo, gusto ko lang yung akin, wala rin lang. Ay, di ba utak NPA yan? Maging utak kapitalista naman tayo. Di ba? Bigyan ko yun kayo ng example. na magamit na natin itong whiteboard. Okay. So imagine, you have a joint exploration on oil. Okay? According to people I talk to in the government, pumapayag na nga yung China before kahit 70-30. 70 to the Philippines, 30 to them. Marami, ang dami nilang gustong proposal. Meron pa na, okay lang, kahit 60-40, gawin nyo rin kaming market kasi we also need the oil. Okay. Sabi natin doon muna tayo sa 60-40, no? Okay. China. PH. Of course, this is your share on equity, no? So, this is 60-40. Yung mga Pilipino, hindi mo parang kailangan 100 kami, ganyan. Utak NPA. Utak NPA yan. Utak NPA. Paano ang utak kapitalista? Paano? Nanonood ba kayo ng Dragon's Den? Di ba, paano ang utak kapitalista? Okay. Because you have a larger resources. Sige. Pagbibigyan kita sa 40. Sa amin yung 60. So, pag nakukuha ka na ng earnings, what do? You invest it. And then, you would be able to buy back, to buy their share. Di ba ganyan ang kapitalista? You buy them out. Di ba? This is why, negotiating based on position is bad. Dapat negotiating based on interest. Kasi kung based on interest, halimbawa, let's say ito kahit sa fisheries, joint fisheries, etc. Sabi mo, gusto mo pa rin, gusto ko pa rin ng more, di ba? And you can no longer get something more from this deal. So when you negotiate based on interest, the other party can offer value outside this one. The other party will ask you, bakit mo ba gusto yung oil? What do you need? Kasi we need to develop our country. Of course, the other party will ask, why? What do you need for your development? We need subways. We need hospitals. We need this. Ganyan. Kaya we need more money. But the other party can say, okay, what if this is my offer? Okay, I'm gonna, I want 50% of the share. But I will give you 3 hospitals. I will build your subway. I will build your speed train. Pero hindi, gusto talaga nila patayan, di ba? Utak, NPA. Oh, di ba? That's how a capitalist think. And China are good businessmen. Kaya nga sila yumaman within 40 years na natatameme na yung Amerika, di ba? Because the Chinese are good negotiators, no? Hindi mo talaga sila mababali-bali. Kaya kayo, kung yung mga diplomats natin ay hindi marunong, humanap kayo ng mas magaling sa kanila. Diba? Why do you need to keep on repeating the same mistake of the former diplomats by appointing them again and sila pa rin yung magagawa? And they never resolve it. My God, por Diyos por Santo, the South China Sea conflict is already 50 years from the perspective of the Philippines. The same approach. Until now, nang nabago lang, mayroon tayong arbitration ruling. But that's nothing because the arbitration ruling is just justification for your position. So, nandun ka pa rin sa level ng position, kailangan you go deep to the interest. Pero kung gusto pa rin nila yung approach nila, pwede pa rin naman makapaghintay ang mga Pilipino ng another 50 years, di ba? Ayun ay kung hindi pa tayo, napatay, no? Or Ana, kung hindi pa tayo na ano yung sabi ni Baser Maltese na lynch mob. Ganyan. So, di ba? Ano daw? Nauna ang gera. Ayun na nga, di ba? Kung mauna ang gera. Kasi nga, you have to to bargain according to your actual capabilities. Kasi ang ginagawa ng mga ito, niloloko ang mga Pilipino. Eh, sabi nila, may alliance kasi tayo sa United States. Dahil sa may alliance tayo sa United States, makukuha natin yung gusto natin. Ito na naman. NDT, okay. That's borrowed power. That's not your power. That's borrowed power. Okay. In business, borrowings are under which side of the ledger? Assets or liabilities? Oh, di ba? That's a liability. Okay. It's a liability, di ba? So for 50 years, we have this Kalayaan Island Group concept, no? Siyempre hindi natin siya magamit kasi nga may dispute. Ayaw rin natin mag-enter ng joint development dahil gusto natin atin lahat. In business, what is a non-performing asset? Is it an asset or a liability? So what do? We turn the non-performing asset into a performing asset. How does a capitalist do that? They actually get a deal, no? That could actually make them better off. Right now, this is the amount we are getting, from this non-performing asset. And then we are spending how much in order to protect a non-performing asset. So nasa negative ka na, negative balance, di ba? Tapos gusto pa nila is mamatay pa tayo. Okay, so ilan ba yan? Let's say 100,000. Okay, so we will die 100,000 in order to protect 100,000 dead. Gaano ba katagal tong gerang ito? Ano bang envision nila? 2 years, 10 years? Sabihin natin 5 years. Okay, minus 5. So minus 5 years in your development as a nation. Matindi yung 5 years na yan, ha? And a lot of negative balance. So, paano ka ngayon mapupunta sa positive balance? Ito yung cost. So, mas mabuti na siguro na, okay, dahil ang ma-achieve ko lang ngayon ay 5, mas mabuti na ang 5 sa 0. Ngayon, kung maging mas malakas ako, I will just buy China back. Bakit hindi tayo magkaroon ng ganyang ambisyon? No? Yayaman din kami at bibili namin yung kinuha sa amin ng China. That's more civilized. That's more peaceful. That's how a capitalist think. Stop thinking like an NPA. Pinapatay nyo na nga yung mga NPA, pinalitan nyo naman yung pag-iisip nila. Eto na, Eto na, ending. Okay. Bakit hindi nila ito maisip? Makinig, ha? Makinig ka rin, Habibs Romualdez, para sa'yo to. Okay. Ito, meron tayong tinatawag na principal-agent relationship. Okay. Principal, agent. Okay. In our context, the principal is the Philippines. Okay. When I say the Philippines, the nation, it doesn't only include this generation. This includes the future generation ad infinitum. That's your principal. You don't only make a decision based on current generation. Your decision affects all generations. So yung agent, ito na yan, sina Tariela. Diba? Sina Romualdez. Okay. Carpio. Okay. You are just agents, no? You are just a historical actor with a specific historical context. You are not the Philippines. You are not our principal. Okay? We are your principal. And the future generation is your principal. And in thinking in terms of a nation, ewan ko ba kasi hindi tayo. Nation is invented in Europe. A nation is a transcendental concept. Ibig sabihin, it exists, you have to imagine it existing forever. Across time. That's why the ethic, the true patriotic ethic, is called intergenerational ethic. You cannot be patriot because of temporary feelings and passions. Ano yun? Emotions of patriots. You cannot make a rational decision based on emotions. Tanungin niyo yung mga asawa niyo, Romualdez, saka Tariela. Do you want them being emotional when you're making decision? No. So kayo, what is the interest of the principal? This generation and future generation. Continued development, peace, order, modernization, industrialization, good education, jobs, etc. All those things. So what is the interest of the agents? Because that is the principal agent problem. Okay? Sometimes the agent's interests are not aligned with the interests of the principal. And that you create a principal agent problem. Okay? Kaya, bila ka narinig, war. How much do you think the country would spend on war in terms of lives? In terms of misdevelopment? Okay? Parang hindi pa nagsawa yung mga Pilipino na nag-host sila ng World War II. Baka gusto pa nila World War III din yung i-host. Pero siguro palitan natin yung pag-iisip na yan ng mga utak pulbura, no? Maybe the right dream for the Filipinos is not to host World War III, but the Olympics. And you can only do that if you can develop your country with all the means possible. And you do that with with partnerships with countries that are devoted to your development and not to your destruction, because for them, the destruction of your country is a strategic move for them in order to weaken China militarily. And that's the truth of it. And I'm so sorry, Babes Romualdez, if I'm intellectually stupid. It just so happened that I am the little child in the emperor's new clothes who saw that the emperor is actually naked and that the swindlers are convincing the Filipino people that the emperor is actually wearing a golden robe. Thank you po. Obviously, all our attempts to understand the situation in all its aspects is being taken as a sign of being a traitor by those who think that patriotism should be based on hate rather than on what makes us truly Filipino, which is our ability to see things from others' perspective, which the word kapwa, there's no culture in the world that has the word kapwa or its equivalent. Okay? Kapwa is the self in others. That is the highest supreme Filipino value. Kapwa. Ngayon, in which ethical system in the world is it an act of treason to pursue understanding rather than to be swallowed by the hatred of the masses? Have we forgotten what Martin Luther King Jr. once taught the world when he received his Nobel Peace Prize in 1964? He said, "We must win our opponent's understanding rather than continue to humiliate the opponent. Because seeking to humiliate is to annihilate rather than convert." Have we forgotten what the Holy Bible said? Diba, we are a Christian nation. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God. Have we forgotten how the Prophet Muhammad and his followers made peace with the pagans of Mecca through negotiations and a treaty? To our Asian brothers and sisters, from the great old civilization China, let me tell you something. about the national psyche of our very young country. Your people have a national identity that can be traced back thousands of years. Our identity is a product of Western colonization. We might be the only one in Asia who didn't defeat our colonizer. We did once, but the Declaration of Independence of 1898 was quickly stolen by the United States. So we are a deeply subjugated people. However, just like our Chinese brothers and sisters, we still have unhealed trauma from the past. We cope with this trauma. And I'm just gonna say this, we cope with this trauma by embracing the colonial masters who abused us for centuries because, unlike other Asians, we never went back to our roots but continued to live according to how we were colonized. Now, China, like your near sea, our seas, the sea surrounding the Philippines, had been a source of our vulnerability. With their warships, the West used the sea as the launchpad of their barbarism. We may have forgiven our colonizers, but we have never forgotten what it felt to be humiliated in our land through our seas. The sea we call the West Philippine Sea is the space where we seek the independence we never truly won in our history. The space where we could finally enjoy the euphoria of winning after struggling with a great power. Now, to Filipinos, what we feel about our sea is the same feeling China has over its near sea. It's a source of their vulnerability. It is through the weakness of their sea defenses that China experienced the same kind of humiliation we experience, but they experience worse than us, to be honest. Have we forgotten what our national hero Jose Rizal once said about China? Okay, this is what he said. China will consider herself fortunate if she succeeds in keeping herself intact and is not dismembered or partitioned among the European powers that are colonizing the continent of Asia. But China wasn't so fortunate. China was partitioned by the West among themselves. Then Japan, later on, copied the Western powers. So, unlike us, China was simultaneously occupied by different Western powers. That's the truth of it, no? So while we got passed from one colonial master to another, China served several colonial masters at the same time. So kumbaga sa rape, na-rape lang tayo after ng isa, meron namang isa. So they were gang rape. China was gang rape. So for China, it's South Sea. That's what they call the South China Sea. The South Sea is a sea where it wants to be strong, just like us. So it could never be subjected to the same kind of humiliation. They want to be strong in the same way we want to be strong in the face of the treacherous waters of the sea of our vulnerability. But let us remember this. Our common sea isn't only waves of pain. Through its waters flow the long peace our peoples had with each other. China is not just another country to us. China is family. Our great hero Jose Rizal has Chinese ancestry. We share the same blood. Why should we throw away a millennia of peace in order to pursue goals that can be reconciled if you will just be patient enough? During the Spanish colonization, we were fooled by the Spaniards to kill the Chinese. So should we fall again to the spell of Americas, it's either you're with them or against us. So to conclude, let me use what President Ramon Magsaysay once said. The Philippines, Hindi niya so sinabi, no? I'm just reworking what he said. The Philippines, China, and the rest of our fellow Asians have a glorious pre-colonial past. Now, together, we must build a future worthy of that past. We Asians should never ever forget that the West came to our region not to bring peace, not to develop it, but to divide our lands and seas among themselves, to subjugate our ancestors, and to shamelessly plunder our continents of its riches, to bring material progress to Europe, while our people were maldeveloping and entrenched in deep poverty. We must not let them do this again. We know what they want from our region. They want the same things they wanted when they colonized every Asian country. And that is Asian resources. You know, the civilization of the Philippines and China have a long history of peaceful relations. We share the same pain of being humiliated by the Western powers. We both belong to Asia. And the South China Sea is our common heritage. Asian resources belong to Asians. No more dead Asians sacrificed at the altar of Western civilization. Asian peace is peace inspired by the wisdom of our ancestors and the fulfillment of our duty to the future generations of Asians. Asian peace can no longer be the peace of American guns and bombs and arrogance. Asian peace can no longer be the white man's burden. Asian peace shouldn't be the fallout of another mushroom cloud over Asian cities. It is only Asians that were victims to nuclear bombs, not white people, only Asians. Always remember that. They never dropped this to Nazi Germany. They dropped this to Asian cities. Asian peace is the civilization we lost, which we must reclaim together, patiently together, all under heaven, like the Chinese would say it, with the dignity of seeing each other as kapwa, like how we Filipinos see it. Thank you.